You know I'm right here on WG Sports Network. I'm Nick Durst, and I'm joined once again by Joe Calabrese. And Joe, I mentioned to my listeners that our next show would be a Wrestlemania prediction preview episode, but some major developments this week that the Wrestlemania card is being shaken up due to the coronavirus. So what we thought we were going to be saying is going to be quite different when it comes on April 4th and 5th. And we're watching WrestleMania, and a lot of people were saying, I wish WWE would stop saying it's too big for one night as a slogan. Well, the fact of the matter, it is too big for one night, because with the 10-person limit in spaces, they had to space this out over 2 days just to film it at multiple locations. So, in essence, it is too large for one night. But now, with all the matches that are probably going to be canceled or having to be ad-libbed, it's going to be a really different card than what we were expecting to see originally at Raymond James Stadium in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, there have been some notable developments in the last couple of days we'll get to. And we'll touch on what happened this week on Raw and SmackDown. And then we'll talk about some potential matches that might be needing to change course because of the development of what is happening with a couple of superstars. So we'll get to all that soon.
So we'll start off right away with the big dog, Roman Reigns, who Joe is not, according to reports, and we'll let you give the source on that. The report is he didn't come to the WrestleMania taping, so he's not going to be taking on Goldberg.
That is correct. Ryan Satin, who now is kind of like, I don't know how on he is to ESPN and UFC. He's kind of like the predominant WWE outsider that they use for the WWE Backstage show on FS1, which is actually a pretty good show. Very entertaining. Needs a better time spot. But Ryan Satin came out a couple days ago, and he reported that Roman Reigns was pulling out of the Universal Championship match against Goldberg at WrestleMania, obviously because of health issues. Now, anybody who knows, this is all for people who don't know, Roman Reigns was battling cancer again that came up, I think it was the fall of 2018, and lost a couple of months of his career. He returned last February, I believe. I believe it was in Atlanta, and he's been back roughly a year now. But this is something that has been reoccurring, and this isn't the time period that he lost last year. A year and a half ago into last year. This is not the first time this has happened with him. So Reigns was on the shelf. Obviously, this is a situation where his health comes before anything else. I mean, he beat cancer into remission a very short period of time ago. I think they're playing this very cautiously. I think he's playing it pretty cautiously himself. And he has to. He has to do what he has to do. He has a family to take care of. He's got a daughter. I know that. I don't know if he's got 2 kids, but yeah. So this is obviously a decision that he needed to make. I obviously support it. I feel bad for him almost because, number one, I really believe that we haven't gotten a true taste of what a Roman Reigns reign. I know, it's funny. Roman Reigns' reign,
Roman's
right?
reign.
The Roman Empire. Roman's reign. I feel like we haven't really gotten a taste of what that could look like yet. And I still feel like there's a lot of animosity between some of the smart internet fans who really kind of pummel it on with him. I mean, it's been more than a couple years now, and we're at the point, I think, where he's a big enough star. He's improved vastly over the years. And number two, they brought back Goldberg for this spot, for the Roman Reigns versus Goldberg spear versus spear match. It was a match that plays up and draws casual people as much as it draws in some of the more hardcore but casual WWE fans. So on both ways of looking at this, it's pretty tough because Reigns is clearly one of their top guys. He's well respected in the locker room. He's the locker room leader. For him to kind of take this route, and we're going to eventually touch on some of the other superstars who are either not well at the moment, feeling under the weather for sick, or who are pulling out of WrestleMania as well. But for somebody who's in that captain position or one of the captaincy positions to pull out, especially in a match as big as this, and do so, obviously that's going to have a domino effect with the locker room.
Yeah, I mean, Joe, if this was one night WrestleMania in Tampa Bay, this was probably the main event. I think they were going to go Reigns, Goldberg. You think it was going to be Drew, Lesnar. So we'll see what happens. I just don't know what they're going to do here as far as, how are they going to announce, Reigns is out, here's a new opponent. Are they going to just really be like, hey, he's got to be cautious, or are they going to make some sort of storyline out of it?
That's a good question. So from reports that have been circulating, they had filmed a segment for this week, but they chose to not air the segment this week. They're going to do so next week. So by this time next week, actually next week's WrestleMania, right? But by Friday of next week, you're going to see what they taped, and you're going to see what their contingency plan is to who's going to be put in place, because other reports have said that Goldberg was pretty, not furious, but he was just kind of ticked off and didn't really want to do the match if it wasn't with Reigns, and he was talked back into it, and they have a plan. So it's going to be interesting to see what they did. I'm very curious.
Yeah, I would have just canceled the match and, do this at a later date, because if Goldberg's dropping the title now to somebody else, it really doesn't, to me, make as much sense to not finish the storyline. A lot of people are like, oh, you need to cancel all these matches. Well, so all the big matches, and now the other rumors are Edge is out for WrestleMania, and that's probably that was their biggest storyline going into WrestleMania. And then you also have the rumors that The Miz is not going to be there. They just announced yesterday on SmackDown a triple threat ladder match for the SmackDown tag titles. And then Daniel Bryan is supposedly not going to be there either. And Drew Gulak just won a shot for Daniel Bryan for the Intercontinental Championship against Sami Zayn at WrestleMania. Maybe they just have Drew Gulak wrestle those guys now. Or they could say, Cesaro, Zayn, and Nakamura took out Bryan. I could see them doing a story on that. Dana Brooke, she's out of the six-pack challenge. For medical reasons. We don't know if it's coronavirus or not, so that's a fatal 5 by now. And Mysterio, he's out. I believe he was in quarantine. Lashley was in self-quarantine, but apparently he's still going to face Aleister Black. And Andrade has a broken rib, and the original plan was for a fatal 4-way between him, Garza, Mysterio, and Carrillo for the U.S. title. So a lot of things changing, and a lot of things could still change in the next day or two. But I believe at this point they actually have fully taped WrestleMania, so I don't know how much more the card is going to be affected. What do you think, Joe?
So what I have heard, right, so let's just go through them one by one quickly, and then we'll... Okay. So you mentioned Edge. From what I've gathered, from what I've read, I believe Edge was able to compete. So I think that the Edge versus Randy Orton last man standing match is still good to go. Moving on to Daniel Bryan, I have heard that Bryan has pulled out. And I don't know if... apparently everything was recorded between Wednesday and Thursday. So from what we heard, Bryan was pulled. I don't know what the contingency plan would be in place for Bryan versus Zayn. One would assume that you might see a situation with Drew Gulak just stepping in and
right. You could see Bryan saying, "You know what, Drew? You won the match. You deserve this opportunity. You go ahead and compete at WrestleMania." So that's the easiest one of all to fix.
Right, I agree. That's an easy fix. Dana Brooke was supposed to be in the sixth. I believe she was replaced by Tamina.
No,
which is
Tamina
why
was originally. So originally it was a 6-pack challenge. Now it's just a fatal 5-way.
Oh, okay. Okay. No, I have this confused, right? So the original 6-pack challenge, okay, this is where I got confused, did not include Tamina. It included Carmella.
Oh, so Carmella also is out and we haven't seen Corey Graves in.
Yeah, we haven't really seen Carmella and Corey Graves. Corey Graves, I know, did the WrestleMania 30 airing that they showed this past weekend on ESPN. Him and Tom Phillips did, and then did the narration.
From Connecticut.
Yeah, from the headquarters. Maybe they just decided it was best to just have Michael Cole and do a one-man team with a rotating color analyst of wrestlers, whoever's in the building, doing the production, the recording for that day, which makes sense, right? So Carmella was originally supposed to be in the match. She was never announced. It was Tamina instead. And the 6-pack challenge was originally supposed to include Dana Brooke, and she had pulled out sick, so it's now a fatal 5-way.
So what do you think for commentary for Mania? You think commentary for Mania is going to be Saxton and Cole doing every match?
Yeah, I think we're going to have unless they decided to record like one Raw show, one SmackDown show.
I don't know if that's because we heard that they did it for multiple locations. So you would think Cole's got to be with somebody, and then they had Phillips and Saxton somewhere else, unless King flew in, but he wasn't on Raw this week. So I guess we'll have to just wait and see on that.
Yeah, I believe it's going to be just Cole and Corey. I assume that they'll have Corey just do the show. I assume it'll be just Saxton and Phillips, and then King will just wherever he is. If he flew home, he flew home. I don't think they want to risk the traveling anymore, because it seems to me that at the beginning I had assumed that a lot of the people who they would continually use leading up to the show would probably stay somewhere in and around Orlando, and I think because they were continuing to travel back and forth, that's maybe why a few of them are sick. We don't know for sure anybody who actually has it, but there's a lot of
the next guy to mention was The Miz. The Miz was flying in from Los Angeles, and what have you been hearing they're going to do with that match?
So from what I've gathered, obviously The Miz has pulled out, right? So I believe that the ladder match, I don't know if there's a segment that they have filmed for this for SmackDown next week. They may take care of this either over like this weekend or sometime early next week. But what I have heard is that you might see a few of those other guys being pulled out of the match. So it's going to be, I believe Morrison's okay to compete. I don't know about the New Day, and I'm not entirely sure about the Usos. But what I've gathered is that if they're going to have one guy compete from each team, that's what you may see. So you may see one member of the New Day versus one member of the Uso versus Morrison, or you might see Morrison versus one of the other members of the team if the other two guys on one of the other two teams, either the New Day or the Usos, have pulled out together, right? So that will be their contingency plan for that.
Interesting. And I heard that the Usos are really mad at The Miz because they're blaming him for Roman not being there and also about their match. But, what are you going to do? I mean, the guy lives in California and you're not supposed to be traveling right now. He's got a family. He's got 2 girls. So, the guy's been doing everything for the company for 13 years.
Yeah, I know. That's really unfortunate. I mean, I can understand why Usos would probably be upset, because I assume that a lot of the talent lives in and around Orlando, or in that Central Florida area out to Tampa. Like, I know Cena, he still lives in Tampa, right?
Yes, he does. Think. Yeah, and I wonder if Hulk Hogan, who originally said, I'm definitely going to be at WrestleMania, ended up coming down for the taping in some capacity. And all those legends that are usually at WrestleMania, they usually come in, they sign autographs, have fan access, and they get announced, or they're in the angles somehow on the show.